will, however, talk a little bit about some of the shifts in the SAT. That said, I am going to give you one quick sample SAT question, right? So if you read it, it said if on a rainy day 40 people showed up for a session in Puerto Rico, and then the following day it was sunny and only 12 people showed up, what might have been the reason for that? So it's either the subject matter, the presenter, the weather, or all of the above. So obviously I shot a little high when I said 12 people, but there you have it. So quick overview of what we want to talk about today. Again, quick overview of the College Board, of who and what we are. I think often people sort of have a misperception of what the College Board is and what we do. So we want to talk about that a little bit. We're going to get into some of our instruments, some of our assessments and instruction. Talk a little bit about access to opportunities, some of the things we're trying to do that really sort of are at the heart of what Councilwoman Gibson was talking about. How do we make sure students have access to opportunity? What can we do together to break down equity gaps and things of that nature? College planning, this is a kind of new work for us, but we're really trying to dig much deeper into making sure that young people, particularly first generation students, who don't necessarily have the advantage of parents at home that understand the process of how one gets into college, how they go through, we were talking earlier, right? How do we help inform some of that? And then we want to talk in the end a little bit about some of the top best practices happening across the country that are getting to some of these issues, right? So again, our mission, we're a College Board's a mission-driven nonprofit organization. We're made up of a little over 6,000 colleges, local school districts, universities that really sort of help shape our policy. So again, some of this we're going to keep real informal, obviously. So if you have questions, yell them out. Some of this will buzz through real quickly. Others won't. So we're a New York City-based organization, headquartered right in Manhattan. Last year we distributed a little over $6 million worth of free test waivers and things of that nature for free and reduced lunch students. We don't think any student should be denied the ability to do something that might propel them forward based on their ability to pay. And obviously we're focused on delivering opportunity for all students. Assessment and instruction, we've got a series of things. PSAT, some of you may know the PSAT is largely an assessment that students take in 10th or 11th grade. It really helps get a snapshot of where that student is in his or her path to college and career readiness. But like I think any good assessment, we kind of live in a world right now where there's a little bit of an anti-testing backlash. And on some levels, we would agree with that, right? But any assessment that doesn't lead to opportunity, any assessment that's not leading to improved curriculum or improved instruction, probably does need to, right? And does need to be addressed. So the PSAT, these are some of the quick benefits of the PSAT. Really, I think often there's a perception that it's just preparing kids for the SAT, and while that's a big piece of it, it really is a very informative test that does help a teacher or at the building level understand where their students are, and then they can PD around that or curriculum around that to make sure they are addressing where gaps might exist. But it's also the most valid predictor of a student's likelihood to succeed on advanced placement, which is the next, we'll get into that in a second. So obviously what that does is it really does provide kids with an opportunity to take college level coursework while in high school, saving money back on the other end because they're eliminating some tuition costs, things of that nature. But we know through that knowledge of the PSAT that there are real and profound equity gaps out there, right? So that we can look and say for Hispanic students or African American students who are ready for AP, far too few of them are getting that opportunity because either it doesn't happen in their school or there's a misperception of their readiness or whatever it happens to be. So those are at the heart of some of the things we're trying to address. So these are just some of the things we know, right? Real quickly, that 75% of kids in New York State take the SAT, but only 41% of kids in 10th grade are taking the PSAT. So if in fact the PSAT is something that we know helps lead to higher scores on the SAT and leading to AP and leading to measuring college and career readiness, then that's something we feel like we've really got to work hard to try to make sure we move up that number, because that is right. I mean, how many students might be 189 points away from something next, right? So how do we make sure that we really drive that? We're in discussions at the state level on how we might be able to offer that at a statewide level. SAT, again, this is, I spent years working for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and I tell people now that I'm with College Board, so I went from something that kids loved to maybe not quite so much, right? Now, that isn't to say that as they go on to SUNY Albany, they don't look back and say, oh yes, that was a valuable medicine that I took and really did help propel me forward. But in the moment, maybe not so much, right? This is what we know about SAT, and this is, I think, sort of at the heart of what we're gonna wanna get into. So we know that through the SAT, students across the country that are taking the SAT, 57% of them aren't reaching the benchmark, which indicates college and career readiness, right? These are pretty consistent statistics that we see across the country and have been this way for generations. So in the past, I think the College Board would have simply gone out and reported, these are the numbers, these are the kids that aren't ready. Our job is to deliver the assessment, your job is to figure out how to close that gap. Not anymore, right? Now we're figuring out, we own this number as much as the school districts do, we own this number as much as the states do, we own this number as much as families and children own this number, and only together are we gonna begin to close that gap, right? Unfortunately, the gap's even wider in New York State, so we know only 37%, while a tremendous number of kids are taking the SAT, only 37% of them, and I think quite frankly, we don't even say 37%, because it's the 63% that we really wanna focus on. So 63% of the population of kids that are taking it are theoretically not ready for college, right? So we've got to figure out how we work on that, and there's some things we'll get into. We'll move through that one, that's kind of the same. Advanced placement, again, probably most of you are somewhat familiar with advanced placement courses, but again, that's just a rigorous coursework that allows students to get college credit.
Question, in terms of benchmark, what ballpark number?
So the SAT benchmark right now is 1550, right? 1550. So now it is so when I was taking it, it was 2 800s. Now it's 3 800s. So it's 1550. Now that's changing too, which we'll get into when we talk about the redesign of the SAT. This is what we know about students who take AP, right? So kids who don't take AP in terms of the graduating on time, and then students who take one AP or two.
So I was just recently told that NYU is moving away from SAT and moving more to AP. And they're willing to take 4 AP courses in lieu of SAT. What do you think?
I don't know as if it's that direct of correlation. So there are certainly colleges out there that are moving to test optional, that are saying you don't need to submit an ACT or an SAT score. There's not necessarily a correlation between that and the AP. It's a little different. But yeah, some schools are moving that way. Ironically, most of the schools that are moving that way, students are submitting their SAT scores to that school anyway. And then there's also the reality that we would certainly never say that we think that the SAT, the SATs are part of how you measure a kid's readiness. And then we'll get to you.
So I'm Angela Garcia, with Executive Director of College Planning, and part of what you're hearing is there's a lot of institutions, colleges, universities, are looking more holistically at students. They're looking at a number of credentials. They will indeed accept an SAT as a credential, but they're looking more and more to AP for not only for credit, but also for placement. It's a sign that student has really had the tenacity and has done the hard and the rigorous coursework. And it also helps them in help shape what types of courses to set up for that student as well. So it's really more of a composite of a couple different credentials, including their high school grades as well.
If you don't mind me asking,
Please.
Is it better to have, I'm a high school principal, so, and I'm still struggling with some of this, we're going to 11th grade, we just started moving up. Is it better to have kids take an AP course or a college course? And to me, they're a little different.
When you say college course, you mean like a dual enrollment course or something?
So kid goes to NYU and takes a first year freshman course.
Gotcha.
Through a special program we have, or we have that kid take an AP course. What?
See, quite frankly, I think it depends on the student, and you know your students the best. I don't know that there's one prescription or one size that fits all. I think it really depends on your students.
But
what programs are available.
Right, because
one thing I would add to that,
Yeah.
one thing I would add to that, right, is that from my perspective, right, and this is, right, I'm not a college board employee, but do you really want to outsource your rigor? Right, so there's something about having advanced placement right in your school, because obviously that shifts the culture of the school a little bit, to say these are available, these classes are available, or whatever that is, but to create some type of college-going opportunity in your school, to me, there's a cultural shift there. So do you want to outsource what's best about, or what's most rigorous about your school?
Will school take you, college take you just based on AP schools, PSAT schools?
Will they take you based on?
There's a rumor floating around that I heard that.
PSAT as opposed to SAT, you mean?
Correct. That they can get accepted based on the PSAT scores without ever having to take the SAT.
Really?
So probably really the best source, and you can take a look at this on our website, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, collegeboard.org is our primary website, and there you can find what the score use practices are by every single institution that's part of our membership. And that's really the most reliable source, because they self-report exactly what they're looking for from students, as opposed to conjecture. I mean, there could be some schools that could indeed be in principle or in culture, their policy, but that's not what's documented on their own websites.
Okay.
So it's better to look at their website and also take a look at the score use practices. Does that help?
Absolutely.
So two quick things that I didn't cover on, sort of Angela will talk a little bit more about the redesign of the SAT itself. But some of the things that are coming with that we're really trying to look at, that we're hoping that we're going to use to attack that, you know, the low number of 37% being measured as ready, right? So one of the things that we've noticed over years is there was a growing gap because of test prep, right? So students who could afford relatively expensive test prep by nature were able to, they had an opportunity that other students didn't. And that's something we always struggled with, right? We wanted to close that gap, right? So we always struggled with that. So we announced in March a partnership with Khan Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with Khan, but it is really sort of the premier sort of online learning tool, if you will. So we're working with Khan to offer free test prep for every student in the world. That's something we're enormously proud of, that we really do believe, and we really want to use that as an instrument. So we're going to look at how we help embed it in help support it at schools, right, so that they can use that as an actual tool, an enhancement tool in the school. How we can get out to the community-based organizations, whether it's the Boys and Girls Clubs or others, and try to put it in their hands so that they can really engage students in those opportunities. So that's one thing we're doing to try to lift the number of kids that might be ready. And by the way, really because the test itself is measuring what a kid should be learning every day in school, that Khan tool will be more than just preparing them for the SAT, because those are the things that they're supposed to know by the time they graduate in order to be ready for college or work anyway. So that's something we're enormously proud of. We are also, for the first time, putting fee waivers into the hands of students. So if a low-income student, free and reduced lunch student, takes the SAT, he or she will be given 4 free application waivers. So they'll be able to apply to 4 colleges for free. One of the things we see is that, unfortunately, high-achieving, low-income students fail to apply to more than one school, and then fail to persist in college at higher rates than their more middle-class students. So that's something we're trying to make sure that students are applying to 4 or more colleges and really looking at that carefully. And Angela will talk, I'm sure, a little bit more about that as well. So again, this is just real quick, some of the stuff we talked about in terms of advanced placement, right? So students that are ready, yet students that are actually taking advantage of that opportunity. And unfortunately, those numbers are even more striking in the Hispanic or African American population. So lots and lots. So students that are ready, but we're not availing of that opportunity. So then I will now turn it over to Angela, and then I'll come back up and we'll have a little bit of a policy discussion on things that maybe we can do together to try to address these issues and work on it together. So.
Yeah, before you get to your presentation, I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to acknowledge someone of my colleagues. So I guess, you know, the biggest challenge I always feel is when you look at education, while we're getting and focusing on SAT and college prep, you know, I'm very big on the entire picture from early education all the way through grade 12.
Yep.
So this year in New York, we were very successful. Mayor Bill de Blasio, one of his main campaign priorities was universal pre-K for 4-year-old children. Because a lot of times in your high school principal, high school teacher, so you probably see some of the gaps that your students have that probably came from middle school or elementary school. And so a lot of us are trying to see how can we build on these partnerships, like you said, with churches, with community organizations, with all of our partners who are serving kids in some way, and just link them together. Because I feel like everyone brings something to the table, but when you put all those ingredients together, you're trying to tackle a lot of the issues. So for my community, and I'm in the Bronx, it's hard for some of my kids to learn when they're hungry, right? Because a lot of them, you know, we have the societal factors, which is very, very key for us. So we also deal with the, you know, lack of health care, community-based health centers that are in our schools. So I guess my question, I'm throwing it out to you, is the population that you now work with and you serve, and how does that also involve students with disabilities and students who are learning English as a second language? because there's a high population in New York City, in the Bronx, of students, just not Latino, but I have West African students.
Right.
And a lot of them are coming to this country at a disadvantage. And so it's a lot for them to learn to deal with the pace
Right.
and to be able to catch up to a point where they're not behind.
Right.
So I want to acknowledge two of my incredible state colleagues, assembly members. I'm so proud to work with them. They're from the Bronx, so the Bronx is well represented here at Somos. Assemblyman Victor Pichado, thank you for being here. And he stepped out, but I want to make sure I acknowledge Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda for being here. So thank you guys.
Yes.
And that's Angela. Thanks.
Perfect.
Can you hear me okay without the mic?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. I wanted to thank you very much for sharing your personal story because although we walked different paths, there were similar paths. And part of the reason why I do the work that I do at the College Board, I'm the Executive Director of College Planning and Access. I'm the first in my family to go to college. My family immigrated from Mexico to the state of Kansas. So pretty far from home. I often get the Dorothy jokes, but they've gotten a little old. I've been living in the New York metropolitan area for 28 years now, so they said I can't say I'm a girl in Kansas anymore. But part of the reason we'd like to really be here is to really share with you some information, but I'm hoping also that we could have some dialogue, because I'm not certain that we would necessarily have all the answers. And there's some initiatives and some programs that we have currently underway that we're piloting, and would love to get your feedback on those as well. So the first one I'm going to cover, and I'm going to cover this a little bit quickly, but just to get to some of the fundamentals and some of the milestones, because we're still a little bit of ways before the new SAT launches, but at least want to provide you with some information. If you'll take a note here at the bottom of the presentation, there is a whole website that we have dedicated to the redesigned SAT. It's called deliveringopportunity.org. It has information for teachers, for counselors, for administrators, for policymakers, and also for students and families. We've been really dedicated to posting a lot of our information online, so you have progress reports and how we're doing. And as we get closer to the actual launch, we'll have more information there as well. And much of what I'm about to present, you'll also find there on that website. So there's three core principles or core columns that are really holding up the work from the delivering opportunity and the redesign of the SAT. Our mission is really to propel students into opportunities that they have earned. And I really want to pause on that one, that they have earned. They've demonstrated that they're academically prepared. We want to protect opportunity from pressures of inequality, and that's something that, you know, Councilwoman has spoken to quite eloquently. Not everybody has same access to whether it's free and reduced lunch, whether it's to fee waivers, sometimes it's to good health care, or even transportation to get to school. I mean, those basic human needs. And then the third column is around promoting excellent classroom work and accelerate students who are behind. And that was part of the work that Mike just spoke about. So if there's one slide I'm going to share with you that I think really kind of encapsulates what's going to happen with the redesign of the SAT, is that there's 8 key changes. The use of relevant words in context, command of evidence, essay analyzing and sourcing of the information, math focused on 3 key areas, problems grounded in real-world context, which I think is very important for students, analysis in science and social studies, founding documents and great global conversations, and the one that seems to get the most positive energy from students is no penalties for wrong answers. So hence the smiley face. There will be 3 sections: evidence-based reading and writing, with the score scale from 200 to 800 points. There will be a math section, 200 to 800, and that's estimated to take about 3 hours. What's currently being done with the redesigned SATs is being tested across the country, so we can get that fine-tune about what that timing aspects are, as well as the scoring. And then the essay is separate, it's an optional feature for the redesigned SAT, and that's estimated to take 50 minutes. The command of evidence. Students will be asked to interpret, synthesize, and use of evidence found in wide ranges of sources. They'll be asked to support the answers that they choose and integrate information conveyed throughout both the reading passages as well as informational graphics, which I think is a very interesting approach that we're taking. If you think about how students are learning these days, really about the picture and how the information can be presented to students that hopefully help accelerate their learning. Relevant words in context. Interpret the meaning based on the context. Master relevant vocabulary and engage in close reading. Essay analyzing and source, the redesigned essay will be more closely mirrored to what college writing assignments will be like. They'll need to be able to cultivate those readings with careful analysis as well as clear writing, and promote the practice of reading a wide variety of arguments and analyzing an author's work. Math, the current research shows that 3 key areas most contribute to a student being college ready and for career training: problem solving and data analysis, the heart of algebra, and the passport to advanced math. And that's with more complex equations. So the redesigned PSAT, that's the precursor to the SAT, is evidence-based as well, and they're looking for students to have evidence-based reading and writing. That score scale will be from 200 to 800, and the math score scale will be 200 to 800. And it's estimated that'll be 2 hours and 45 minutes, and again, that helps the student prepare and determine how ready they are for the SAT, as well as gives us really great indication of what their AP potential might be as well. And then what I wanted to share with you, because part of what happens when we get involved in the work, and I had the wonderful opportunity to travel across the country and actually spent a couple of days here in Puerto Rico. We have an office here in Puerto Rico to talk with students and families. I want to give you the lens of what this means from a student and family perspective. When students open their test booklets on March 16th, they'll encounter a new SAT that's focused on useful and more focused and useful than more than ever before. The full specifications of the exam, along with an extensive sample set, are available now at the deliveryingopportunity.org. So we have a whole experience for students and families as well, so they can actually see what some of these items look like, what some of these questions look like. And the redesigned SAT will ask them to study and to apply deep understanding of a few things shown by current research that matters most from a college readiness and also success. And success, by success we mean persistence through graduation. And they'll find questions modeled on the work of the best classroom teachers and perform task practice and rigorous coursework. And that gets back to part of the work that Mike was talking about on the AP front. So again, I just really want to put that out there. You can actually subscribe to an email. You can get an email alert anytime there are any updates or changes. So if you want to, it should be, hopefully it's easy to remember, deliveringopportunity.org would be a good place to follow. And we'll make sure that you have our cards as well, should you have any follow-up questions. Yes, sir.
Does that data come back to the school? So do we get so kids take it different test size, some at the, depends on the
Yes.
school, I guess. And I got 500 kids taking the test,
Yes.
let's say 100 on grade. Does that data come back to the school so that the school can now make some adjustments to its curriculum based on what they're
Yes,
seeing in the
absolutely.
data?
Even with the SAT today, those reports are available. There are, there's a tiering of different types of information that's available. So I'll start with the student to the counselor. So the counselor will have a registration roster that will indicate what the student, did they sit for the exam?
Right.
Did they use a fee waiver?
Right.
How did they do? So so all that data goes down to the student level. It can actually get pushed up to the classroom level,
Right.
school level, and district level, and even to the state level.
And one follow-up?
Yes.
In the past, like Sullivan here, we were taught vocabulary.
Yes.
Isolated vocabulary. Vocabulary at the end of the week, some of us remember those, right? On
Yep.
Fridays at the end. But now today you're saying that kids are gonna get paragraphs with embedded vocabulary and then get questions on that embedded vocabulary?
Correct, and the thought is that with a lot
So
of
no
context around
isolated
it.
vocab,
No
no
isolated vocabulary.
analogies
No, this is to
of-
that, is that is to this.
Okay.
Right, those two
Oh,
are.
that's so
No,
good.
no. So, but really putting it in context, if you think about reading the great works,
Right.
let's say you read the Declaration of Independence, it's because of the context that's being set in
Yeah.
that you understand what some of those words mean. Same principle here.
Or you look at Red, so we talk about a lot about the Gettysburg Address, right?
Right.
Gettysburg Address is about 240 words, but it's, the word dedicated is in it like 7 times. And it means something different almost every time, right? So,
Mm.
so how is that, what does that word mean in the context with which it lays, right? And that's what students have to be able to understand and analyze, right?
Does that help?
It sounds a little, I'm from New York, I work in the task program, which is
Oh,
usually
After school
GED.
recreation.
And they going in that same direction almost,
Okay.
to prepare the young adults who dropped out of school or who's now going, older adults.
Sure.
It's almost the same concept.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
That
I'd
is
love to hear
good-
more about
good
that
work,
program
yeah.
as well. Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question. First and foremost, no penalty for wrong answers. Where was that exam when I was taking?
You didn't get any wrong. What are you
No,
worried
oh
about?
yeah, well, you know, I don't want to discuss my grade. That was interesting, but I know that there's been a lot of discussion around the issue of Common Core, and there's. I speak to teachers in my district. I have family members who are teachers in the Bronx, and the biggest issue with them is that not the issue with the Common Core, it's the issue of how it's rolled out. So the problem becomes, and the question is, so I know that the SAT and the PSAT, it's modifying its format. Does it account for the Common Core as it is, or we're sort of taking a wait and see approach?
Directly aligned to the Common Core, but it certainly is saying these are the things that we know students need to be able to do well in order to move on to college or move on to career. So it's certainly informed by that. I think some of the things that we're doing obviously are, right, is the Khan Academy partnership, where we're really trying to give kids the learning tools that they can use. We're also building in some new course, we're rolling out some new course frameworks that would be for more 6 through 11, that really would, not necessarily curriculums, but frameworks or modules that teachers could really use that would also be informed by the Common Core standards, that would hopefully help propel students forward.
And I think the other thing that I would add is if you would take some time and, or have some staff take a look at the deliverinopportunity.org, where you can see some of the test examples, and you see the types of questions, and you see the infrastructure and the actual framework. I think it might make it come to life a little bit more as well.
Fantastic, I certainly
Does that
will.
help?
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
And I can't answer why you, wrong answers, but in life we also face that same challenge, right, with wrong answers.
I think I got like a 1350 or 1400 on my SATs. I don't remember
Well,
just
that's
numbers,
good.
but that's
Fine.
really
You
good.
did
That works.
something right.
But you're sitting in a fantastic seat and you have a wonderful responsibility. It's all worked out.
Well,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, I appreciate it.
I like to look at first off, my name is Donald Nesbitt. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Support Staff Union in New York City. I'm Local 372. I have two questions. The first one is, what are we doing to educate the parents of these students that are currently in high school? Because the reality is a lot of their parents didn't attend college. So this may not be something that's of importance to them
Yeah.
as the parents. So what are we doing to educate them? The first thing. Secondly, I would like to ask, I represent some of the lowest paid workers in New York City, the school crossing guard, the school aide in schools. Our children, I have a son that just started high school. To be able to afford some of those AP courses, is there any waivers or anything that they can get? Because you don't want to have a kid that may be in advance,
Yep.
and because the parent can't afford to send their kids there, they don't have the same opportunity.
Yeah, and we'll discuss this a little bit. I'll do the AP fee waiver piece, and you
Okay.
can do the hard part. How's that sound? So we have a program where we do AP fee waivers. So theoretically, for the last 10 years or so, low-income students have not had to pay for AP exam fees. And in that time, we've quadrupled the number of free and reduced lunch students taking AP. That waiver is made up of a federal appropriation, of a college board commitment where we waive $26 of each test, and then the local school waives it, what they call sitting fee. Unfortunately, with cuts to the feds, that fee waiver, there's now a gap of about $18. Last year, we worked with the assembly a little bit. This year, we hope to work a little bit more. What's happening in a lot of places is states are choosing to close that gap. So it's the state covers a piece of it, we cover a piece of it, the feds cover a piece of it, the local school district covers a piece of it. We think that makes for a sound sort of public-private partnership. New York has not stepped up to do that yet. Perhaps if it was still Assemblywoman Gibson, we get it a little closer. But that is something we're committed to working very hard at trying to do. So right now, a low-income student would have to pay $18 for the test, but we're working very hard to close that gap.
And so the other part of your question was, how do we get this message to families? That was the other piece of it. It's part of the message. I think the message is multi-pronged. The message certainly is about the redesign of the SAT, but also how does that fit into the context of college going? And what an important credential that is to actually getting into college. So it's really that double message of talking to them about not just the task of taking the test, but what that means and what that will enable them to do, what they'll propel them forward. So the work that we're doing today, and I would love some suggestions as well, is working with a couple of different organizations, certainly with parent-teacher organizations, and developing the plan, the communications plan, as well as with the teachers, principals, school districts. We're also working with community access organizations that do work with students and families. We're presenting information in multiple languages, hopefully to contextualize it and make it easier for parents to understand what this means, or I'm gonna say families, because that's a very different view that we have today, but really about families, so they can appropriately support those students. So multi-pronged approach. We also work very closely with other organizations to perhaps put something out into the media as well. So we have a big ramp-up plan for that. So in the fall, we'll have the new PSAT in 2015. In the spring of 2016, in March, will be the new SAT. So there's a wonderful opportunity for us to work very closely with media as well to make sure the information gets out there.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, as a suggestion, we
Yes.
also have, in the schools, we have the parent coordinator, who their job is to engage the parents and also work with those community-based organizations to
Excellent.
build a coalition. A lot of times they get forgotten.
Yes.
We do work with those folks at the
The
building
support
level.
staff, so
Yeah.
that could be another key
Yep,
way to
without
getting this
question.
information to the family.
Absolutely.
Great idea.
Lastly, I just want to say to the Councilwoman, I've heard a lot about you. I actually,
It's not all true.
no, good things, but it's good to hear your story firsthand as to what you went through to get there, and it's also good to see that you do the same thing. You bring in those
Absolutely.
interns, and that cycle
This is all a
continues.
circle.
A good
Yep.
thing.
That's right.
One of the things that I do, I have a group of kids from my community. I've been coaching basketball for the last 16 years. I went on to coaching high school basketball in New York City at a high level. And I never forget where I came from in the community. I grew up in a Bushwick community in Brooklyn. And I never forget that. There's kids on my team who may be in need of school books and things like that. When I take my sons to shop, I take them with me. And I put goals before them. Every kid on my team has, since they were in 3rd grade, now some of them have been to high school. Their goal is to sign a letter of intent to college somewhere. And that's their goal. And
Good job. Right?
I let them know it can't be my dream, it has to be your dream.
Right.
And that's just what we gotta do, is install in kids that this is something good, because it's easy to find negative things. And in those communities, we need to install positive things.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
And
That's
just
great.
to add on to that, I mean, it's all about sharing information. There are so many different outlets, like, community education councils, parent coordinators, family advocates, all these different people with titles, right, that have a connection to parents. So a lot of times in my area, I let all my parent coordinators know, invite me to PTA night, invite me to the assemblies, because you get an audience of parents.
Correct.
And as you talked about parent education, a lot of parents are learning with their children.
Yes.
So, the culture, the language difference, that's a huge barrier for many parents to overcome. And so a lot of them don't necessarily want to come out and ask about college access, SAT preparation. So a lot of times, it's not that young people don't want to do it. Sometimes they don't have the parents pushing them to do it. And so that's where we have to come in. And so, I'm very big on that. The partnerships, I just learned about a new program called OBT, Opportunity for a Better Tomorrow, that works with PAL, and they work with, different youth organizations, and they have a center in Jamaica, Queens, called Y Roads, and they work with disadvantaged youth, and they're opening a new center in the South Bronx. And their focus are dropout students, LGBT, foster care students, and they're trying to get to these young people, because these are young folks that no longer want to go to high school. They're either going to drop out and do nothing, or sit in school and not learn and flunk out. And so they reach out to them to try to capture them. I want to make sure I introduce another person, and she is very, very special to me. She's like a big sister. We look alike. I get mistaken for her all the time, but her story is just like mine. And when I look at the work and the way that, she's been blessed, she was the first African-American woman to win an elected seat citywide in the city of New York. And here she is today, our public advocate, Letitia James. Thanks so much for coming, Tish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to say the program that you were talking about.
OBT?
I work for that program. It's called Pathway to Graduation. It's a citywide
Okay.
program throughout the 5 boroughs. OBT 1 and 2
Mhm.
is in Brooklyn. They are like the CBOs that we work with. Labeling, these kids are considered their last chance. This is their last chance for education. Unfortunately, when they come to New York, they drop them in the GED program, which is no longer called GED, it's called TAS. They drop them in. Some of them have education in their country, but it goes with English as a second language. But it's an excellent program, and more people should know about it.
It's very helpful.
And we have them all. We have the correctional facilities, we have mental health,
Right.
drug abuse. It's a nice, we've been around for a while, but it's not as known as people think it is.
Okay.
Well, very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you very much for that. So in addition to redesigning the SAT, there are 3 key ways that we're working to deliver opportunity. Increasing access to higher education with college application fee waivers. You know, Mike talked about this a little bit earlier. What I'd like to do, because this is specific to the work that I've most currently been working on, is access to opportunity. And in that, need to address inequalities of college access and success. There are large gaps in enrollment, persistence, and completion by income and also by race.
Yeah.
The research finds a number of significant barriers to college access. The four largest are really around affordability, academic preparation, complicated information, complex process, and certain higher education policies and practices. So the focus of the work that we've been doing over the course of the past 18 months is about removing barriers. And we've been taking a three-pronged approach, that's hard to say. Ready, go, and finish. Ready to improve access to rigorous coursework and reduce the information gap. That's part of what Mike talked about. Go, connect to colleges where they can succeed. And then finish, improve post-secondary degree completion rates. So those are the 3 prongs. The biggest concerns for applying to college are predominantly, these are no surprises, I'm sure, but based upon the research, are really about the financial aid understanding and also college planning. So the top 5, finding out how to pay for college, applying for scholarships, figuring out what college will cost, and figuring out what I had to do to apply, and writing personal essays. And we talked earlier before the session started, and you know, many of us that are first generation did not have access to a lot of information, so we had to kind of meander through, I love that word, meander our ways through the college planning process. And I want to try to break that cycle so that more students don't have to walk that same journey. I'm still here, still standing. It was kind of a curvy road, but I think it's important for us to help advantage those students. Improve access to rigorous coursework and reduce the information gap. A quarter of high schools with the highest percentage of Black and Latino students do not offer any Algebra 2 classes. A third of high schools with the highest percentage of Black and Latino students do not offer any chemistry classes. Yep. So we aim to propel all students who have earned the opportunity into the opportunity that they have earned. So I heard some of those same words coming out of Councilwoman. So when we think about those power words, I think they can be very impactful. So our approach is evidence-based, and our hope is as we do these initiatives that they're also scalable, so we can reach and support more students. We rely upon our membership. The College Board is a membership organization, and our partnerships. So I heard some of those themes coming out as well from some of your questions. And it needs to be individual and also systematic. So individual meaning to the individual student, and also systematic means across the system, that across a cohort that we can move and we can motivate students. So work to date, and these efforts continue in 2015. We have a series of campaigns. AP Potential, that's the All-In campaign. That's part of the work that we're doing based upon the student performance on PSAT. They've demonstrated the potential for AP. We want to make sure they understand what that potential looks like, and we try to match them to the coursework that they should be taking. Realize Your College Potential, those are a series, and 4 or more, I'll put those 2 together. Those are a series of packets that we sent directly to students that provide them with college planning information. It also included college application fee waivers and information on how to build a solid college list. And the college list, when I say it fits them socially, academically, and financially. Mike talked briefly about our partnership with Khan Academy, about bringing free world-class college SAT prep training for students. We're doing a couple of unique pilots, and these are not, we did do a couple of public releases about this information, but these are just starting over the last couple of weeks. I'd be anxious to share with you next time some of the data. We're doing texting as well as virtual advising with students in hopes that we can connect with students more frequently and in bite sizes so we can help them through the critical college planning milestones. Yes, sir.
Do you have videos of this? Because one of the things I've noticed is that kids connect more with the YouTube-ish type of interaction. And even the novella, like to break it into maybe a 2 or 3, like a kid going through the process, which I think is a way where a parent coordinator could take it into their school, show it. Very little, they have to talk about it, but they can do more of the interactive part. Just trying to figure out ways of making this more accessible to, maybe Common Core was done that way, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation either.
So what I'll do, I'm gonna advance ahead. We talked about, I just wanna pause quickly on, this is just a small list of partners that we're working with today to help us with our access to opportunity work. We also work with smaller college access organizations that may not be as well known, but are doing real deep and rich work in communities. As an example, I work with the Latino College U organization in Westchester that have a surprisingly large number of Latino students, first generation in their community, and helping them with their college planning process. It's going to get closer when we get to your question, hopefully with some answers. There are a couple of different approaches that we're taking. I have formed a partnership with Road Trip Nation, and this spring we will, and it will be televised on PBS, a first-gen road trip, which takes these 4 students, and they're already back. It's in post-production now, getting completed. These 4 students traveled the country and interviewed leaders, both the civic, business, government, and you'll see some celebrities as well, that they were able to interview to talk about what their journey was like, how they made their choices, who inspired them, and how did they end up where they were. So I get some of that feedback from people that have maybe not their final destination, but have certainly arrived at a very healthy destination. So that will be out in the spring. So that's video, and that will be video content that we'll use and share as well. There will be a wrapper that goes with this PBS special so that we can send this out to schools. So if you wanted to have some classroom instruction and taking the students through this, you can have a couple of different exercises to help them map what their journey might be as well. This is the virtual advising. I'd like to talk about this a little bit because it is about taking bite sizes from the college planning process and guidance itself. So what they will be doing is taking them based upon where the student is in their life cycle and what the college planning milestones are, and giving them bite sizes, whether it's a text or whether it's virtual advising. Those advisors will take them through those processes and work one-on-one. When we're doing the text, we're actually linking students to video assets on our YouTube channel that talks about, as an example, the college application process, or it talks about FAFSA and what you need to do to complete FAFSA. So we try to mix the media a bit in hopes that we can engage students.
And just for a little context, right, so most of us probably know this, but the ratios of school counselor to student is like 475 to 1 nationwide, right? I mean,
That's the average.
Yeah, that's average, exactly. So it's enormously high. And counselors spend less than 5% of their time on any real college or career guidance, right? I mean, they're so busy with the things you talked about earlier, right? Just making sure kids have the services to just survive, which is needed and laudable, obviously, but they're not really doing any of this work. So students who perhaps don't have the advantage of having somebody at home that can guide them through it, they're just not getting it.
And these are meant to complement and augment counselors.
Right.
Even didn't have to fill out a FAFSA,
Exactly.
I didn't even know what FAFSA meant.
Yeah, of course.
Like even in your school, I'm pretty sure the ratio of, guidance counselors and college advisors to students is challenging.
So we also
it's
have,
something that's
and I know we're running close on time, but I'll give you a quick peek into, and this has been around for a while. We've been doing college planning for about 15, 20 years. Since I've been there, we've been providing and developing tools to help students, families, counselors, and advisors. We worked quite closely with the Education Conservancy to build a website, a series of online assets, as well as publications that help support students, families, and counselors. So there's 2 sites. bigfuture.org, that is where I spend the lion's share of my time and energy, is continuing to enhance this resource. There's step-by-step guides to college, comprehensive guidance, many ways to get started, search for college, and ways in which you can customize your college plans. It was written and developed specifically for students, but there are also resources and tools for educators that help in mapping the process and also supporting students who if they have an opportunity to do additional support, and there are also family resources there as well, in the shape of downloads, checklists, there's videos, as well as college planning night presentations in English and in Spanish with handouts. We have in beta a College Go application. It's right now, it's just for Android. We currently have this out there being tested. We have several, if you're an Android user, which I am. If you want to take a look at it, you can find that at the Google Store, Google Play. It's College Go. We have about 5,000 students that are actively using this application right now. I'm curious to see how that turns out. We're waiting for those results to come in. This was launched last spring. You can go, and this is a website that was developed and designed specifically for traditionally underrepresented students. There's a lot of video content there as well to get through. We have a lot of different resources and tools. And you'll see there it talks about getting started, how to find a college, explore your careers. There's also a cross-match to majors as well. You know, if you have a thought of becoming a teacher, what are some of those majors that you should be considering getting in there? If you look at the finding colleges, it'll get back to the question you were asking earlier about what credentials that a college will look for. Every college that completes the annual survey of college, we upload their profile to this website. And in there, it talks about what their credentials, what they're looking for, what their AP credit policy and placements are, what their score use practices are as well. So it's a good resource to take a look at that. Institution by institution, which I would recommend. Here's the the educator resource guide. I would draw your attention to inside the center box there. We have a lot of demonstrations, presentations, lesson plans, Spanish language handouts, and we also have a college planning program, and this is a curriculum that teachers can use to help students do their college planning, explore their careers, and this goes from middle school to high school, and it's at grade level specific content, so we're not, so it's just in time for students, whether they're in 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and all the way up through 12th grade. And this is all free on the collegeboard.org, or you can also find them on bigfuture.org. Here's the program: free standards-based college planning and career exploration for middle and high school students. It was developed and co-developed with the American School Counselor Association, and these are very flexible and easy to implement lesson plans, and again, it's free. And then, I know I rushed that very quickly, but any questions before I turn the mic back over to Mike? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I work for a nonprofit organization called Los Sures in Brooklyn, and we do affordable housing mostly. But we interact with a lot of folks, and we don't do education, but it seems to me that we could help in spreading this information out. I know that was a question.
I love that.
And I know if there's any resources that can help in us having this information
Sure.
available.
Can I give you my card, and if you email me, I'll put together a kit for you, and then we can start it.
And we really are doing a lot more in terms of trying to get the word out, right? So we have not met with Councilwoman Gibson yet, but she's on our short list. So we're working with the city council folks and borough presidents in New York. So one of the things that happens in New York City is every 10th grader is able to take the PSAT for free. So the city school district itself has determined that it's a valuable enough tool and important enough that they're providing it to every student. The problem is many students don't take advantage of it, right? So they look at it as a day to, well, there's 3 hours, I can do something else, right? So we're really trying to figure out how do we use your bully pulpit, right? How do we use the way you reach out to your constituents? How do we find ways that borough presidents and others reach out to their folks and say, hey, look, the city has determined, the city council has determined that this is important and we're funding it, right? Because the money comes from the city council ultimately. And this is why we believe that it's important that you send your babies to school that day, right? So, and really get in and talk about some of the, that'll lead to free test prep, that'll lead to AP potential, that could lead to college cost savings, that'll lead to information about how to better prepare yourself. So we're really for the first time trying to figure out how we engage, how we jump off of your platform and talk to your constituents in that way. So that's some of the ways we're trying to get the information in the hands of parents as well. So we certainly appreciate the council making that available. So real quickly, just sort of some of the public policy, right? So I'm the public policy nerd. So she talked about systemic, right? How do we create laws, regulations, investments that will drive this on a system-wide level? That's kind of where I fall in. And we look at it in sort of major buckets, right? So how do you deepen the capacity for students? How do you build special initiatives? And then how do you create, accountability so that students are getting credit for those things, right? So, but then we'll get into a little bit what we know. So Florida, first state in the country to actually reverse the equity gap. So I think this is 2013, the 2013 graduating class, 25.1% of the student body was Hispanic, yet 31% of our population of students who were scoring a 3 or higher on advanced placement were Hispanic. So far too often, obviously, we see an equity gap where 25% of your students are Hispanic, but only 10% of the students who are taking it, availing themselves of rigorous work, and that does not include AP Spanish, by the way. So this is these kids, and it is because the state has made some real investments and focused on some things that really have been critical. Obviously, New York State, better than some states, but there's still a fairly significant gap if you look at 18% of the population being Hispanic and only 13% of our population of students who are succeeding on AP being popular. Those are gaps we want to close. So this is a little bit again about Florida, some of the things they did we'll get into, right? So again, out of interest of time. So what has Florida done? They've, in Florida, you take AP, it is simply a part of your everyday class. So the state has determined it will pay for all AP exams. So students, there will be no barrier, there will be no perception of barrier. It's just the state determines investment. If you think about it from a public education standpoint, just because one kid's a little smarter than another kid, why should he have to spend $89 on a test when the other kid didn't? So how do you embed it into the school? All 10th graders are able to take PSAT, which is finding many, many, many more students who are eligible for PSAT. So we saw earlier that there's lots of kids that are ready for AP that aren't. That's with 41% of the kids taking PSAT. Imagine if statewide we had 80-85% of the kids taking the PSAT. We would unearth a whole other slew of kids that might be ready for it. And then it's the commitment of making all in and making sure all those kids are actually valuing themselves that opportunity. Rich AP professional development, right? So many, many teachers will tell us that one of the most positive PD experiences they have is whether it's going and scoring our AP tests somewhere where they sit for a week in a big gym somewhere and actually score the test, but it helps them understand and frame what the test, or our summer institutes, right? And most AP teachers tell us that when I teach, by teaching an AP class, I became a better teacher in all of my other non-AP classes, right? Because they were bringing some of that content in. And some of these things may not be possible here, but in Florida, there's an AP teacher bonus. So when a teacher brings a student into AP, if that student scores a 3 or higher, they get a $50 bonus. The way they fund AP for this, the way they fund it for the class is they actually, in their funding formula, every student that is in an AP class is worth 1.16 of the funding formula. So there is an incentive, there's a built-in incentive for the school to get additional kids into AP to make sure they're ready, but then there's also an incentive to make sure that we're not just getting them the door, that we're getting them to a 3 or higher. So those are some of the things that Florida has done and that we worked for the last 10 years or so in Florida to do, all things that we want to ultimately talk to both the city and the state about. Again, a little bit more. So this we sort of covered a little bit earlier, right? That we know that there is now, in the last 2 years, there's a gap for low-income students who are now having to cover that $18 for the AP, right? We've worked really hard to quadruple low-income students taking. We don't want to cede any ground in that area. We think it's too critical, and that's why we're really going to ask the state to step up and help us close that gap. Pure investment-wise, we know just of the low-income students in New York State who took AP, that the return on investment was about $17.3 million, assuming each of those kids took those 3 credits and saved a class at SUNY Albany or whatever it happened to be, that they were saving $17 million. One of the things we hear, from a non-financial standpoint, one of the things that we hear AP teachers tell us that if we could do one policy that would help drive AP results, it's a common articulation policy. So where you have state-funded or city-funded systems, SUNY or CUNY, how do you say that all kids who get a 3 we'll get credit for that, right? So now it's kind of institution to institution, individual school will say, well, we'll only take a 4, we won't take any, we'll take a 5, we'll take a 3, right? So it's kind of all over the board. We think a commonly well articulated policy would be really clear, and teachers tell us that they will challenge a student, right? So they'll say to that student, look, you come take this class, we will, and you commit to working hard, I'll drag you across the finish line, right? We will do whatever we need to do to get to a 3. So that's one of those things that we think really, does have some legs. And we certainly want to talk to both the council and to state legislators about how we might look at a policy like that. This is what we know for states that are, so we have, I think, 12, I think it's 12 or 13 states that are investing in paying for all students to take the PSAT. So if you look at the growth of AP in those states, it's far outstripping states that don't offer PSAT. So more students taking the PSAT, one of the many benefits of that is finding more students who are ready or on the edge of being ready for AP. And we know that as a general rule, right, and this is, we hope this will play out with Common Core, all the implementation issues, right? But kids are more ready for rigor than we give them credit for, right? Now, teachers need to be supported, right? So all of those things absolutely have to happen. But kids can step up to rigor if we give them that opportunity. So those are just sort of a handful of the things that we think from a public policy could work and that we'll be working on, and a little bit sort of our commitment to the work itself. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. There's an ocean out there, so probably people want to go take a walk or something like that. But folks have questions?
One thing I just wanted to add is that, I think it's a very unique opportunity for us working with the College Board to really be creative, right? So we have to find different ways to reach out to parents and children. And I know I'm big on, trying to do things differently. So I go to senior centers because all my seniors have grandkids.
Yeah.
I go to churches on Sundays because most of my seniors go to church. So I've tried to establish partnerships with all of my small businesses because, my residents shop in my local businesses in the supermarkets, because a lot of times people don't know what's out there, and they don't know how to ask for information. And for us in New York City, yes, we can call 311, but it's not necessarily that helpful if you want to know how I can get my kid into college. So between all the different organizations that you represent, whether it's housing, but housing is just as important as education, as is healthcare. So working with health providers, working with schools, working with some of our advocates, working with religious organizations. I just think it's a way for us to try to get more information out. So if you remember, we just closed out the sanitation exam, right, for city sanitation, was from October 1st through 31st. There was a huge social media campaign to get people to apply. How many people signed up? Thousands of people. So that's the type of message I want to get in terms of services, using social media, but also making sure we hit people in the communities, in the senior centers, in the bodegas, in the supermarkets, because that's really the only way that we can try to get that information out.
And in the city, you're making that investment anyway, right? So
Yes,
we say, that's kind of how we originally challenged
And they're already
council.
there.
So you all are paying for the PSAT. You all have made a decision that this is important.
Right.
Now let's,
And they're there.
now this is the free stuff, right? It's figuring out now it's hard work, it's shoe leather,
Right.
but how do we make sure now we're getting that word out and we're making sure that, and again, that's where it goes back to also shifting the culture of this, right? So all of a sudden, we talked about, imagine if every sophomore in the state or in the city was taking PSAT on a day, on a Wednesday in October, and then that day was also sort of college and career readiness day, right? So kids were coming in that used to go to that high school, but now are councilwomen, and they're talking about their journey, their success, right? And all of a sudden, things start to flip, and kids start to say, oh yeah, that's why I'm going to high school. I'm going to high school because that's the next step is college or career, right? The same thing. That's why when you're in middle school, you're getting yourself ready for high school, right? These are the phases that we go through, so.
Early and better.
Earlier the better.
Great, anyone else?
Well, like I said, we've got cards we can lay out. We really appreciate you guys being here instead of out there, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Enjoy the
it.
beach, thanks.